All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for attending our Scaling Smart Strategies to Future-Proof Your CRM webinar today. I am Terry Dolan. I am a Senior Sales Executive here at Situate, and I am joined by the very handsome, the very capable Jamie Plasman.
Hello, everyone. How we doing?
So as we're waiting for some folks to get in, I just wanted to give you kind of the lay of the land today. We will be covering the smart scaling strategies and really focusing on three areas: the people, the pipelines, and the processes to think about when you're smart scaling. And then tying it together with an overarching theme of data hygiene and institutional memory. And then we'll give you a little bit of blurb on us and ready to handle any questions that might come up along the way. All right. So Jamie, we can start to get into things here. So why are we here? We're talking about smart scaling, right? Which is thinking about where your firm is going to be 1, 3, 5, 10 years down the line and setting the groundwork for success so that you are removing the roadblocks that might be in the way as you're adding different strategies, different lines of business, different employees. Obviously, you're going to grow over time. So there's a lot of different moving parts that will be in consideration as we look at the future scaling. And we want to make sure that we're doing that to lessen those roadblocks as much as possible. And this conversation, I think we picked three good topics, right, to really focus and harness in on, which is people, pipeline, and processes, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And as many of you know, Terry, he loves alliteration, so having that be part of that was definitely a nice bit of fun for him on that front.
Yeah, I'm always using alliteration advantageously, aggressively.
So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be having a little bit of a conversation back and forth about, well, what are we talking about with this? And this is not necessarily Situate specific. This is more about how we've gone across all different CRMs across the way.
All right. So let's we'll get into the first topic here, right, Jamie, which is people. And when we're talking about people, we're really going to kind of laser focus, at least the initial part of this, on your firm's employees, right? The folks who are going to be touching the CRM on a daily basis, interacting, trying to gain information from it, make better decisions. And those roles and those folks, obviously, when you first start, everyone's wearing multiple hats, right? But as firms diversify, there's a lot more specializations in your roles and your job function. And so, how do you kind of manage that whole nebulous cloud that is coming, and how do you kind of remove those roadblocks, Jamie, to add those people, and what should folks be thinking about?
Sure, yeah. So when you start coming in, or you start as maybe you're a smaller firm who's just getting started, or maybe you're just a smaller shop that has a lot of different hats, as you mentioned, that people are wearing, right? You want to make sure that when you start setting up your things like permissions, they're key to make sure you have it set up in the right way. You obviously don't want to handcuff people by preventing them from doing their job by giving them too restrictive of a set of permissions. But you also want to make sure that you're setting yourself up so as you start to grow, as people start moving around the organization, as you start adding more people to the team, that you are setting up in that appropriate way where you're actually giving people the right information. So you can make sure the people who have access to modify, enter, or view data are doing so in an appropriate manner. Right. So, I mean, Stuart's been doing this for over 30 years, right? We've been looking at this. We've worked with all different firms of all different sizes, right? If you look at the small shops, that's when you start getting into these many hats. You start having people who have more and more roles on that, right? And therefore the permissions within the CRM are very broad what they're allowed to do.
Everybody's an administrator, right?
Everyone gets to be an administrator. People can modify all different types of things, and that's one of the nice things about Situate is the fact that you can easily administer it yourself. You don't need to be a technical wizard to make things happen. But as you start to grow, as you start to expand, right, having everyone become an administrator now means that when you start trying to define certain pieces of information, not everyone has that same level of understanding of what's going on in the other departments, the other groups. You want to make sure that you start scaling those permissions appropriately, so the people who need to be worrying about the larger view can worry about that larger view and not necessarily have it be just about your individual needs at that particular time, right? So you need to make sure that as you grow, your permissions are able to be modified and be able to be tweaked at the, to reflect what the current state is, right? I'll probably bring this up a couple of times today, right? A lot of people look at a CRM implementation as this monolithic big task that you do at the very beginning, right? And you set it and forget it and you move on from there, right? One of the things that I know Terry and I very much agree on is the fact that the CRM needs to be modifiable, needs to be able to scale with you and grow with you and be able to tweak as your business changes. And make sure that you're giving the people the rights, the roles that they need to do right now, and be able to modify that and tweak that going forward, right? And it's not just about a power grab, right? It's not a matter of just I want to control everything as the administrator, right? It's making sure that those rights, those roles are set to be aligned with the business.
And apart from roles and user types, there's also job functions and the way that information flows from one people to another. And when you're looking at small firms, that's Joe to Janice, right? But as you start to you grow and diversify, Janice is on vacation, someone still has to do it, right? And so there's teams of folks that are responsible for things. There's an idea of a pool of people who might be associated to a task, right?
Right, and those in that pool of people may not always understand exactly what you need to do. So I may be covering for somebody else, and I have a general gist of what that person does, but I need that help. I need that assistance to understand, well, what is it that I need to try to do? And that's where you can start having some of these types of workflows, some of these types of offerings that help you identify, well, what needs to be done to make something happen, right? And a lot of the different CRMs out there, particularly the more mature ones, do allow the ability to create those workflows, to create those aids to help in the day-to-day interactions of knowing, well, what needs to happen at certain points in time, right? What information needs to be filled out at what stages? What's the next step in this pace? And what I've seen in a lot of different scenarios is when you actually look at building out those workflows, you start to say, when this happens, automatically create this next piece, do this next task, have those types of scenarios be created to help understand, help people to view what those required steps are. Right, and again, like I mentioned before, a lot of people will say that at the beginning of their project, they create all these workflows and they spend all this time trying to get the perfect setup there, right? I don't know about you, but for me, I look at it as any workflow that I've ever set up, it lasts a year, maybe two before something changes in that and you need to tweak it a little bit, right? A new product gets entered in, a new team gets added. There's another person who needs to approve this or that, right? And being able to say that you're taking those workflows and modifying them as you go is there. And maybe your firm is lucky, or maybe they have a slew of developers who are sitting around waiting for work to do, and they could go ahead and tweak and build those workflows out for you, right? But a lot of firms that we work with, they don't have that, right? They have maybe a more technical person, like a business analyst, or maybe just the most techie of their marketing team or their client success team or the client servicing team are the people who are responsible for managing the CRM. And right, and the way that CRM, the Situate is designed particularly, is to help you as a business user be able to tweak and modify those workflows without having to go out to some third party to make that happen.
So, we talk a lot about the culture of CRM, right? And getting people to spur the right behaviors and motivate people to keep up with good data hygiene and to follow processes. And the biggest detriment to a good culture of CRM is, for me, the next bullet point, right? Where my job role, this field in front of me doesn't make sense. So I either ignore it, which most likely I should, or I throw information in there that doesn't make sense to the person who created the field and is trying to get specific information, right? So for my role, being able to see the information that's important to me is
Hmm.
going to spur my good behaviors. When I see a bunch of information that doesn't make sense, I'll tend to skip the good information that needs to be there because this whole section just is filled with fluff, right? And I'm gonna move on.
Right, and that comes even as you're changing roles, right? So that's true as well. So as you grow up or grow out in your responsibilities, right? Having those roles, having those changes, be appropriate is definitely there. So having a screen reflect what you're doing today and the type of client or the type of prospect that you're working with or the type of account that you're dealing with is key. Having those being able to change those screens to show the information that makes sense at that stage is definitely something that is very helpful to be able to view which fields are required at what point in time, which information might be helpful to you at this stage or for this type uh, of a prospect versus another one is definitely there, and being able to tweak and modify those again is highly invaluable. And as you start to look at that, right, you start to grow those types of information, so those views. Having that all be institutionalized, having that all be memorialized inside of an application is key, right? I look at it as whenever you want to grow, whenever you want to expand, you need to be able to hand off responsibilities to somebody else, and having that background information be available for them to go forward with is definitely a nice thing, a necessary thing to have, right? I look at it as if you're not spending your time institutionalizing that knowledge in the CRM, what you're now doing is anytime that person wants to move on, they can't, right? They can't go up a stage because now they are stuck as the only person who knows these accounts. You can't possibly put them up into this respect because they're too valuable in that one level. They can't grow. Or maybe somebody moves on to a different firm, goes to a different location. Right now, you have the next person who comes in has to rebuild all of those relationships, understand, ask all those questions again. And you're now wasting a ton of time and energy reestablishing all the information that should have been captured over time with inside of that CRM. So if you're only using your CRM as just a fancy Rolodex, right? You're wasting a lot of energy building out and rebuilding all of those relationships, all of that information, and not institutionalizing that knowledge that's coming along.
And we really focus kind of on the firm's employees in this presentation, really. But you touched on it, right? There's a whole ecosystem around the investors that we're trying to onboard here. There's accountants, there's lawyers, there's high net worth individual versus institutional. There's all different types of folks, and so the idea that everything should be dynamically changing based off of my job role and the person that I'm focused on at that particular moment, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. Whether it be a technology consultant that's coming in to help with something. We actually have a number of firms that work with third-party asset raisers who are out there making calls for folks, right? And they actually do have access to the CRM in some cases, but obviously you're not giving them access to everything. So being able to partition off that information to create those kind of Chinese walls to say these people have access to this information, but not that, right? Having a CRM that allows you to scale and be able to have control of that is definitely key. So therefore, you may be able to show them certain information about a particular contact and maybe some of the sales opportunities, but you don't give them access to information like the accounts that are out there, or maybe some of the PII information that may be available that may not be something that you'd want to share, birth dates, social security numbers, tax IDs, and the like.
So moving on to our next alliterative topic here is pipeline. And I thought other than just the alliteration part, which I'm always a huge fan of, it's the idea that, no matter what strategies, lines of businesses, if you're working with deal flow, if you're working with whatever it might be, there's always conversations, emails, appointments, documents, anything that you want to memorialize around an opportunity, whether it's on the investment side or the deal flow side, right? And so really taking a look at pipelines, which are a huge part of of asset management. How can we think about what pipelines we're going to have further on down the line, right? And how do we scale to meet the demands of not only memorializing that, but acting on it to efficiently move things through.
Right, and I look at it as the pipeline is rarely a set and forget type of approach, as I mentioned before, right? It's not a scenario of what I care about today may not be what I care about tomorrow, may not be what I care about a couple of months from now, right? When I look at our pipeline, when I review what's going on, I'm constantly doing different types of searches, sorting, filtering. I'm looking for different trends in the data and summing up numbers in different ways to view, well, what's going on in this case? What are we looking at? What this quarter versus this month, right? How do you view that information in a simple and an easy way? Is key, right? I look at it as when I have my pipeline. I have a chart that I look at it that views in different ways, but then I'll group that chart in different ways. I'll group it by the product, or by the rep, or by what's the expected close date of that particular opportunity, right? What's the value of that, right? I can view those in different ways. Being able to modify those easily is something that is key, right? I'll take a look to see, well, are we seeing anything from a particular geographic region where that's particularly hot right now? We're seeing a lot of information about this, or maybe it's a particular asset class that you're hearing a lot about that's coming up in the news, right? And being able to tweak and view those pipelines and see those in different ways is highly valuable and necessary to find those trends and to be able to be responsive and predict what's going on next, as compared to just waiting for something to happen and thinking back at the end of the year, huh, I noticed that we saw a lot of this past year. No, how do you want to look at that? How do you move that going forward?
And getting back to the human element, right? In order for the pipeline to work, the information going into the pipeline needs to be accurate. And one of the ways that you can do that is have things met to your particular sales process or inbounding process, right? Having the right names of stages, having the right process flow to look at that pipeline and not be shoehorned into something that was built for plumbers or lawyers or something else, right?
Exactly, and being able to modify that as things go on, right? If
An
you're setting
account
up
is an account. Account isn't a business, right, Jerry?
exactly, right? And that's definitely true, right? When you look at it on that front, right? You need to worry about how do you create that nomenclature that makes sense for you, and as you grow, being able to tweak that in different ways. So if the sales phases that you have, say if you're in the institutional side of the world, is going to be completely different than if you're in the funds distribution world, right? Where you're looking at more like marketing your funds out there to the world, as compared to selling a separately managed account, as an example, right? So looking at that and having a tool that can grow with you, to be able to show different types of pipelines, different types of sales opportunities, and different information that's required for each, and be able to view that all in the same system is highly valuable, right? You don't necessarily want to have 4, 5, 6 different CRMs out there, each for each of those individual departments. You want something that's going to work across the board, so you could view that along the way.
And pipelines always start at the macro, right? We're always looking at the big trends or where things are in a pipeline, but inevitably you're going to drill down, right? And you're going to look at each opportunity and try to figure out, how do I move this to the next phase? And one of the things that we talk about a lot is the ability to look at the relationships that you have around that opportunity, right? And something like Situate that has those linked relationships, so you can see, do they use a consultant that another prospect uses? Do they sit on the board of directors of somebody else? Do they used to work at this, firm, and you have an existing relationship there? So there's a lot of, things around individual opportunities when you drill down that Scaling Smart can help with, right? If you're gathering that institutional ecosystem knowledge and having that available when you're diving into individual opportunities.
Yeah, and being able to view those linked relationships across the board is definitely something that needs to be done, because you can't ignore those relationships. If you ignore those relationships, you're going to run into problems, right? If all of a sudden you wind up finding out, for example, that you had a conversation in one meeting with a client where there was an investment consultant involved, starting to nitpick about certain types of information or certain, maybe it's the history, the performance, whatever it might be. You want to be able to know and easily be able to determine, all right, this particular consultant is obviously not so happy here. Where else am I exposed? Who else is he or he or she involved with? So at that point in time, I can know what I need to address in the next meeting that I'm having with that consultant to see, well, what's going on there. How do I better prepare my answers to address that particular question, that particular risk that might be happening, right? And with that, right, you need to have a tool that can help you identify that, view that, and be able to show that information. Now, a lot of CRMs let you do that, but you need to be a highly technical person to get access to that, or be an expert in that tool, right? And what I look at it as is you need to have a tool inside of your CRM that gives that ability to view that for other less technical folks, less power users, right? So you want to be able to have a scenario where you can actually create a dashboard for maybe your senior managers who aren't going to be the power users, or maybe a less technical, senior leader or salesperson who needs that kind of holding of the hands to make that happen. So can you create their dashboards for them? Can you help them set up their home pages, their saved views, their searches, their standard reports that they run every week? Can you have that be something that gets fed to them easily, so that point in time you're not acting as making them be that expert, and allowing them to grow and focus in on the things that make sense, which is raising AUM for you, as compared to it being something like all they're doing is spending all of their time, tweaking and modifying or entering data into the CRM. So you want to create those types of abilities to let them focus in on those on the pipeline.
Excellent points. So our last focus here is really on processes, right? And when you think of processes, right, the first thing you think of is probably like these massive multi-stage interdepartmental processes, or things that have to run from a compliance standpoint, from a document distribution standpoint, or onboarding, or something of that nature, right? But a process can be as simple as closing out a task, right, and making sure that all the required fields, everything that you need to close that task out has been done completely. You've crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's on that particular minutia of an activity. And coming on to Situate about 18 months ago, right? The first thing that struck me is when I close an activity, I'm prompted to immediately is there a follow-up activity to this, right? And nothing is worse than having a great call, closing out the thing, getting your mind taken somewhere else, and then realizing a week later that you didn't have a follow-up task scheduled for that person, right? That's the worst thing that can happen. But so let's talk about processes, both at the kind of the macro and the micro, and what people should be thinking about in terms of smart scaling.
Right. I mean, and I think the first thing that comes to mind when I think about it, whether it be micro or macro, right, is this whole concept of garbage in, garbage out. Everyone's heard that before, but you need to make sure of the information that's in the application or inside the database has to be something that you trust, something that is something you could actually build off of and go forward with. And to your point, Terry, right, looking at it as I have this great meeting, and then I dropped the ball because I forgot to enter a follow-up, right? And being able to have that. So you want to be able to have things that show up automatically inside of the application, whether it be a form that allows you to fill out the information that you need at that time with only the information that you need to see, and not 50 other fields that don't make sense for you, right? Because the last thing you want to do is, if you start having to get distracted by filling out all this, you're going to forget this, you're going to forget to do that, right? You want to be able to have things like a notification that gets sent out that says, hey, I have a sales opportunity that's out there that I haven't spoken to this person in the last 5 days, the last 10 days, the last 100 days, whatever it might be. You want those, maybe you want an email that gets sent out, or you want it to automatically create that next task for you to remind yourself to do that. And it might be a scenario of, in the early stages of your opportunity, maybe 30 days, maybe 45 days is a good break between initial outreaches to somebody. But as you start getting down to the closing and contract phases, maybe 2 days or maybe 3 days is all you want to go between conversations, right? To be able to have your processes help you understand, well, when is it that where are you in that scenario? What is that next step that you need to do to help you follow through with that task? So using things like form rules to help you identify what information is required at what point in time, or whether it be automatic workflow updates and time-based triggers or searches that will help you identify, this is the opportunity that I have, and I haven't spoken to them since so and so date. I need to reach out. Something might be falling off the chart on that, right?
And if you think of kind of the macro level processes, Jamie, like newer firms,
Mhm.
what's the one thing? It's onboarding, right? Where
Oh yeah.
it's multiple steps involved, multiple people involved. There's emails going back and forth. There's post-it notes. That's somewhere where you can really start thinking, how do I build good processes from the start?
Yep, and having those types of tasks that automatically get created, creating different shell accounts or document records that need to be completed to capture that is definitely a key piece, right? Or even having something to be said of knowing when to fill information out. For example, if you're looking at the target AUM, you may not know at the early stage of an opportunity where, what that AUM is going to look like, how much they're potentially going to be investing with you. But as you start getting into the mid and late stage opportunities, that field needs to be filled in. You need to have that be available to you. You don't want to force someone to fill that in at the early stage, but you don't want somebody creating a late stage opportunity where they don't have the AUM filled in. So saying that this is required at this stage for this reason is key, and you want to make sure that as you're building it up, that makes sense for the way that you're running your business and how you're doing things. Now,
Well,
go ahead.
yeah, we've certainly talked a lot, and we're coming up on time here. So I definitely want to make sure we have the ability to fit this overarching concept, right? And to me, this breaks down to there's a lot of great, buzzwords and technologies out there in and around intelligence and data visualization and making smarter decisions. But I've got two bass guitars back here, right? It's all about the root notes, right? You don't get those lovely informational melodies unless you have the root notes. You've got to dot the I's, you've got to cross the T's. So it's all about data hygiene. It's all about ensuring the right behaviors so that there's no magic wand that's going to make intelligence decisions based off of incomplete, poor, or just sparse data, right?
Yeah, absolutely, right. And as many of you know me know, I'm a data geek at heart, right? I am at the core someone who loves to get in there, get into the weeds and try to find trends, look at different pieces of information, figure out all those little factoids that are within that database. Unfortunately, I don't have as much time as I would like to spend to drill into all that analysis and be able to look for all of that. So I use a lot of different techniques to help me with this data hygiene, a lot of tricks of the trade, as I like to call it, to figure out, well, what data is missing, what's maybe inaccurate, what might be miscoded to help me figure out what's going on. Um, I have what I call my data cleanup dashboard that I have set up, which identifies all of these items that may be a problem, right? An opportunity that's marked as closed in one situation, but the status is in progress in another. Or maybe I'm seeing a scenario of information where a particular person is on a mailing list that shouldn't be getting that particular mailing for different various reasons, right? So I have this data cleanup dashboard that I use that I'll take a look at maybe once or twice a week to see, help me find those inaccuracies, find out, well, where do I have clients that don't have their agreement up on the portal or something along those lines, and be able to catch those types of things before they become a problem. And I do this a lot, particularly at the month end time frame, where I wound up using that to clean up all of that data before I create my reports. So that point in time, it's something that I know I can trust that report when it goes out. Because one of my personal pet peeves is when a report gets created and you're trying to present this up the chain, or you're trying to make decisions on that data, and you wind up finding out that someone comes and says, "Oh, you know what? That's wrong because I forgot to do this, or that didn't get updated, or whatnot." And then all that work to prepare for that meeting is now out the door, and everyone's now just ignoring it, and you didn't actually make any decisions because the data's wrong. So spending
In
that time
past
and
lives,
energy.
I can't tell you how many meetings I've sat in end of the year reviews where all the slides were wrong. Figured out like 5 minutes into it.
And you start wasting all that time of all those people who were in those meetings. So I can actually spend a few minutes, 5-10 minutes, to just make sure all those things are correct, or reach out to the people to say, hey, Terry, I noticed that you forgot to update this information. Can you fix that before I run my reports? Right? Those types of things are getting all done ahead of time. And that is a hugely valuable piece that as you grow, that becomes more and more important, right? If you're a smaller firm, you may be able to keep track of the 2 or 3 different opportunities you're working on at any given point in time. But as you grow and you start having dozens or hundreds of these opportunities working, you can't keep track of all of that in your own head, or unless you're much better than I am, because I know I can't keep track of all that in my head. So having a tool that will let you do that and be able to view that information to let you grow and let you expand, and captures that. And then you could create reports that get run automatically on a regular basis to keep track of those communications, to find things out about, well, what are the at-risk levels that you're comfortable with? Which people haven't you been communicating enough with? Or almost just as bad, how many people are reaching out to you too much, right? What's going on there that why do you all of a sudden have 50 phone calls and 25 emails in the last 3 days for this particular company? What's going on there, right? Being able to help that bring up so you can identify your areas of risk, your identify what's going on, and see what might have you forgotten is hugely valuable.
And we're already over time here, but I just wanted to hit one last point on here. The coming into this industry, the first thing I noticed right away is how much movement there is, right? Firms are being spun off from larger entities, there's M&As, there's movement within firms, between firms, right? And so all of these great conversations and these histories of these relationships, in some instances, there isn't a way to transport that information that goes along with that contact in other places, right? You have to create and clone and create a new contact and somehow figure out how to get that information there, but not associate it to the new firm, right? So there's a lot of headaches in and around porting data with the people and keeping that institutional history.
Yeah, and having that visibility to know when someone moved, where they moved to, where they were before, and being able to track all of their activities that happened, regardless of where they were. Was it 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 6 weeks ago? Having that all be visible in that one contact view is huge. Is helpful.
Well, obviously, Jamie and I are excited about this topic and helping folks plan and scale smart with their CRM. And we here at Institute have a 30-year history of doing this for clients. We've got a very configurable CRM that helps you scale smart, that manages all of those processes or gives you that flexibility to say, hey, this is the right approach for us right now, but it's also going to be the right decision down the line, and we can future-proof against growth and diversification. So definitely thank you all. Jamie, any last words?
No, again, thank you for your time. Right, you want to make sure that as you're looking through your CRM, you're not only thinking about what needs to be done today, but can it continue to evolve with you as you grow forward? Right, it's the biggest thing I'll take away with this is it's not a set and forget. It's not just a project that has a certain end date. This is a living and breathing thing. If it's being done right, your business is constantly changing. Your needs are constantly changing. Your CRM should change with you.
And I guess the exclamation point on the end of that is without developers and third-party entities and a plethora of other people and resources, right?
Well, yeah, because if you're dealing with that, unless you have that team of developers that I mentioned before, it's never going to happen, right? It'll be the best of envisionment, but never actually occurring. All right.
Well, thanks everybody. Hopefully this was beneficial to you, and Jamie and I are always here to answer your questions.
Thanks so much.